Sure. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity, Anil. Um, Rahul, I'm Rahul, I guess, is a founder slash entrepreneur. I started my career from picking up right after university, and the whole entrepreneurial bug had hit, and we wanted to try, me and my friends, a couple of things, and so I guess we never looked back. Kicked off in few companies, all of which failed. Everything failed because miserable failures for many years. But the journey and the experience was worth it. And I think that's what brought me to a point where I had some interesting successes along the way. But the most recent one, or the most interesting one, of course, is Junglee Games, where I found myself in India in 2011, exploring after having sold my last company, which happened to be a dating site for South Asians in North America. I found myself exploring what else and what's the next thing that I could start, and what's the next opportunity. And my co-founder Ankush, who was in the States at the time, told me that we should look into gaming. He had already kicked off Junglee Games, and it was doing pretty okay as a startup for India, but he didn't have the I think the support, and so he was looking for the right individuals to be a part of the team. And so I explored the opportunities with him, through him, I guess, over 2011 to 2012, and then we took off. 2012, we officially got started with Junglee Games, and I think so almost 9 years later, we are in the top 3 gaming companies of the country. We serve, of course, real money skill games, but we're exploring many other avenues and many other products. We went from 2 people, Ankush and I, to 400 plus people now. So I think there's a bit of experience along the way that's been picked up. I'm happy to share that experience with you. And I think the last thing I'd like to end with is Junglee Games for 2 years in a row has been ranked a great place to work, top 15, in the country, in India. No small feat, considering how many small medium businesses there are, especially even in the tech space, that apply. So we're very proud of having built that culture. It took 9 years to get there, of course, but having built a culture where we were rewarded, awarded, and acknowledged for being a great place to work. And I'm very proud of that one achievement amongst many other ones, of course, with Junglee Games. But yeah, that's Rahul Bharadwaj.
When you thought of getting into your own entrepreneurial journey, why did you choose specifically gaming as your maybe second or third venture? What was there? What was that pull factor specifically?
Yeah, I think first of all, it was like venture number 7 or 8. There's so many that we don't talk about. I don't want to put on my LinkedIn because, as I said, there was all failures, but fair enough. It could look like number 2 or 3, but that's okay. And gaming actually was picked because this is more of a technical response, right? When you're trying to enter a market or you're trying to start a company, you could do it one of 3 ways. One, you have a problem and you solve for it, and suddenly you solve by solving a problem for yourself, you've created a product and entered a market where you can solve it for other people, right? This was my dating site, like almost 12 years ago, where I was single and I didn't have a website where I could go and date other South Asians in North America, or maybe even globally, perhaps. So I had actually made the dating site to solve my problem. But Junglee Games, there's a second way you can enter a market, is you study the market. You see what people are tuning towards, and what's missing in their experience. You, in the third way of entering a market, is someone else has solved the problem. So you find this a lot, right? Someone launches one version of a product, and then suddenly all these second, third versions come up from all these other places because one person has solved it. So let's all rush behind it, right? So for Junglee Games, it was more of a combination of 2 and 3. I didn't have a problem playing games in India, of course, but what we noticed is there was a market need. People were coming on mobile even more. They're talking about 2011, 2012. Facebook mobile was really taking off. You might remember that as the age of Flipkart and a few other great companies, all coming up, and pushing the forefront of the digital age. But there was no dominant gaming company. There were all these big names we knew: Flipkart and Snapdeal at the time for e-commerce, Paytm for payments, right? Still is, of course. They've managed to hold that top position, and a few others in all these different verticals. But in gaming, there wasn't one to look at, and that's where we felt strongly we could go in, dominate that market, because everyone likes to play games, and gaming, I think, is a core need for not just India but like globally. So we did our version of the market study, found the gap, went right in, and here we are today.
So Rahul, right now we are going through unprecedented time. We never, in our lifetime, came across a pandemic like this. And during this time, we all realized that there has been a much more importance on HR as a function. So this is a typical question to a co-founder, CEO. What do you exactly look out, specifically when you are hiring HR people in terms of competencies, and how important is HR as a function to you?
I'll answer the latter first. HR is the pillar on top of which the rest of the company stands. If you don't, and you can give it many other names. You can call it people and culture. You can call it people operations. You can call it team and talent acquisition, team building, and talent retention, right? So many names for the same function. And that function is taking care of the people, and I was going to say employees, but employees also not a right word in my mind, right? Taking care of your people or your colleagues or your team, but taking care of everyone so they can do the best work that they can, and that automatically elevates the business forward, right? So you're absolutely right. HR, in not just these times, HR was always very important. It just got thrust in the forefront because of these times where we are today. Mental wellness, employee care, and even hiring and building a culture remotely as you're working, all became this heavy responsibility for every company, right? Because not every company could get through the phase we've just gone through. But for me personally, it was always at my core that we need to ensure we have great people, they're well taken care of, and then they're supported in the work they want to do. Just these three sort of basic practices. And you can call this talent acquisition, talent retention, and culture, like literally in those three categories. And automatically you're starting to build a great company, which then attracts more great people. So it becomes a flywheel, right? And so great people come in, and then they propagate your culture, and it gets even better. What I'm looking for when we look for team members in the HR function is exactly, people who can understand what these verticals mean. And it starts with, if I had to talk about just skill set, it starts with number one, empathy, right? You have to empathize with the other person's situation. When you're recruiting, when you're retaining, or when you're building company culture, if you don't understand how the other person feels, you will not make the right decision, right? And there's so many multitude of decisions you have to make as a HR professional, from who to hire, who to fire, how to promote, what event to run for team building exercises, what process and policies to put in place. You may think that reimbursement policies are really just a policy to put together so someone can submit a bill and get reimbursed for something they did. But the reality is, even that's your culture. How hard do you make it? How easy do you make it? How much do you reimburse? When do you cycle that through? Or do you advance money, or do you post money? Do you pay on time? Do you pay later? Do you come down hard on employees who submit late? Do you go easy on employees who submit a year later? So many practices just in this little one function of reimbursement. That's it. And so empathy is massive, right? Number two, you have to be always learning. The human knowledge and the understanding of business practices, especially from an HR function, every function is always evolving. But even in HR function, it's interacting so much with the human base, that there's human knowledge that you need to keep learning how to deal with people better, how to grow the company better, how to build culture better, right? So it's not a one and done piece. It may seem simple, but at the end of the day, as I said, when we get down to the actual function, there's enough knowledge and information out there that you could spend your entire life reading about just particulars of HR. So I think always learn, right? So empathy and always be learning. And finally, number three, and this is one of the values of Junglee Games, right? It's just embrace change. Embrace change is important because as they say in our culture, right, that change is the only constant, right? The universe is ever changing, right? A little bit from there. So the intent here is that the company will get bigger or smaller or evolve. HR needs to fit that function. It needs to be liquid, right? It cannot be a solid, because if you are in a 500 people company trying to behave like you're or be the HR professional for a 10 people company, you will have a lot of challenges. And if you're in a 10 people company, you are trying to be the HR for a 500 people company, you will have a lot of challenges, right? Like if it's 5, 10, or 500, you need to change, embrace change as the system, as life goes on, as the company goes on. But you are the change maker. That's the realization eventually, right? Like only when HR leads the bastion forward and says, this is a change, everyone, we're now a 300 people company, we have this happening, or now we are a 20 people company, we have this happening, all the team members follow. They actually, believe it or not, look at HR for guidance. How should we behave? What should we do today? And what is our base function? What are our roles and responsibilities, right? Like where do they all derive from what the HR professional in the function puts together and brings all these leaders and business vision together for the team members to execute. So embracing change is the third piece I look for those who want to be or will be part of my team as we work together forward. Yeah.
Somehow the feeling is, HR is a good to do function, Rahul. And in that scheme of thing, to what extent, when in a change management process or your culture transformation process, there HR professionals are bound to take certain risk. And you yourself have said that, when you started your career, that you have seen failures initially. To what extent do you believe in that scheme of thing? It is important for the top leadership to allow people to make mistake, learn, and move on when it comes to creating innovation or great workplaces.
There's a very, very good book. Actually, first I would say everyone who's listening, you should read a lot of books. It's very important for your own career and your own professional growth. Now, as answering your question, there's a very good book called Creativity Inc. by one of the co-founders of Pixar Interactive, Ed Camel. And in that, one of the principles he outlines on how Pixar, a creative organization, grew and succeeded over time, amongst many things, one of which was mistakes are going to happen. You cannot put in a preventive measure for everything possible. Every function, including HR, will make mistakes. What you can do is support your people and empower them to fix what happened and then look forward. So that entire thought process, which is like I want everything perfect. I want no mistakes in this. I don't want to attend to this issue. It should never happen. HR should be perfect or something should be perfect. That actually is not the right thinking for growing an organization, scaling an organization. In fact, the bigger you get, the more mistakes you're going to make. And it's not you, as I talk to leaders, I guess it's individuals in your organization, and it's not your fault or their fault. It is the way we evolve as humans, every day is we like children, right? Like we make mistakes as children, we learn, we pick up on that, evolve, and then we get better, right? As we get older as adults. But guess what? Adults also make mistakes, right? It's not like people don't make mistakes at home. Like they show me one environment where like it's so near perfect, and it's possible to have, someone could say, well, Six Sigma is perfect. Well, it came into being after people made mistakes, right? They're allowed in that way and that process to evolve and fix. And what's important about Six Sigma is anyone can stop the line, right? They're empowered to figure out where there's an issue and pause it and address it, so that you don't wait for someone else to address that, right? So making mistakes is part and parcel of a growing and scaling organization at all times. Yes, it doesn't mean you make mistakes every day and it's the same mistake and you don't learn. No, it's the opposite, right? You get better, you educate yourself, you train yourself, you make new mistakes, and those new mistakes only mean you are evolving and you're being a better person, both professionally and personally as you go along. So very, very important perspective. Not everyone gets it, of course.